This is the Humans of Gaming podcast, an open and honest conversation about games, life, and belief.
Hello and welcome to Humans of Gaming. I'm Drew Dixon. I am your host of this here podcast. I'm joined with Chris Gwaltney. Hey, Chris.
Yo, I'm Chris. I'm the chief executive nerd for Love Thy Nerd. And Drew does stuff too.
Yeah, I'm the chief content nerd. I didn't get my title. I don't think anybody really knows what that means, so it's fine.
Well, you might be surprised.
So if you heard chief content nerd, what would you assume? James?
Oh, hi.
Yes. James Hudson is our special. I'm killing this intro. James Hudson is our special guest. What would, if you hear that title, what would that come to mind?
I would assume you sit around and make up stuff.
Yeah, that's basically true.
That's not far from the truth.
Yeah, that's basically accurate. So James, you've done a lot of work in the games industry, but you're with Skybound now. Give us kind of like, how do you present, like somebody asks you, what do you do in the games industry? How do you frame that?
Chief board game making nerd.
Oh,
No, I pretty much just make board games. You know, I'm at the heart of it. I'm a creative, and there's lots of different venues of content that I love to create. Board games is definitely one of the big ones. I love making content for YouTube. Like we're filming some shows right now. I love doing podcasts. Pretty much if I'm making things, I'm a happy camper. So I also suck real hard at detail-oriented type stuff. So I'm more of the 30,000 foot, like, let me cast vision.
My man.
But yeah. When we get into like spreadsheets and like detail stuff, I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Same here. Same here. Though I super appreciate like the people that are really good at that. Like those people are amazingly wonderful. April Lynn, who works for Love Thy Nerd, is kind of wired that way a little bit, and man, I don't think we could do this at all without her. So
that's my wife.
Shout out to April Lynn.
We need
your wife. Yeah, she's super on top of things. Seems like.
Yeah, I can see where if you especially in a relationship, you get a husband, wife, whatever combo that's together, and they're both 30,000 feet in the cloud or both detail oriented. I mean, come on, you got to have a compliment going on there.
Yeah. You're married, right? So what is your dynamic with your wife?
She's definitely more detail oriented than me. That is for sure. I wouldn't say she's like one hundo in that range, but she's she definitely handles the details for us.
Yeah. So, what is your official title with Skybound?
I am Senior Director of Tabletop Games.
Nerd.
Senior Director of Tabletop Games. So, basically a massive nerd is what that means.
Yeah. Well, it's funny here because there's like 8 divisions, and board games is like the new redheaded stepchild here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We do film, comic books, video games. There's a lane for almost anything when it comes to entertainment. And so board games, like they started with Super Fight back in the day. They picked that up from Jack Dyer and ran with it when it exploded around the time that Cards Against Humanity did its thing. And they rode that wave for a while. And then we co-published Grim Forest together. We did 3 co-publishes together. And then they said, let's just marry up and make this.
Let's get it on. I remember seeing Super Fight at this tiny little convention here in Ventura, like years ago. And they were running around. They went to like every exhibitor and just gave away copies of the game. And that was, I don't know how long ago that was, 5 years ago or something.
That was before my time.
Yeah.
So you were with Druid City, and then Skybound essentially like acquired Druid City. Is that how that worked? Or
businessy things are complicated, but like I started Druid City's games. It's still mine, and it's still its own entity. It is just under the umbrella. It is, some would call it like a publishing house for Skybound now.
I gotcha. Very cool. So you started Druid City.
Yeah. Me and 3 of my friends, we were like, hey, let's make games. This sounds like let's do the thing.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
Yeah, that was in 2015.
Okay. So pretty, like, still pretty new, but you obviously like got the attention of Skybound, which, like, I guess we should frame for our listeners what Skybound, because you said, movies, video games, like what are some things people might know of that Skybound has done?
So the big thing that people will know Skybound for, it's Robert Kirkman's company, the creator of The Walking Dead. And so the elevator pitch the elevator pitch of why Skybound exists is it was a long, treacherous road for Robert to get The Walking Dead on TV. It took him almost 10 years to get that first pilot episode into AMC. And it was more complicated than it should have been. And so he came out of this with a hunger and desire to help other creators get the content that they're passionate about into mass media in a much more simple and straightforward fashion, as opposed to the Hollywood BS that he had to jump around through. So
yeah,
that's where Skybound was birthed from.
That's cool. So what was your first board games with Druid City?
My very first game was Barnyard Roundup. I wanted to do a game just like pretty much like everybody that you hear now who's like, I got a game idea at board game night, right? I was that guy. And for me, it was spawned out of, my son was 4-ish at the time, couldn't read.
So he was learning like barnyard animal sounds and stuff.
Well, exactly. But he was also making me play Chutes and Ladders in Candyland.
Which is funny, like, why are we so concerned that our kids know, like, I mean, we're a pretty like industrialized society now. Why are we so concerned that our kids know like barnyard animal? But we all are. We're like, make sure they know what a cow says. Anyway,
yeah, because it's easy, maybe, I don't know.
It's fun. I mean, I participate. I'm all in on that. I want my kids to know.
You're part of the problem, Drew.
What a duck says.
Way to go.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, so your kid was 4. Your son?
Yeah, my son okay. At the time was 4, and I couldn't take any more Chutes and Ladders. So I was like, I got a game idea. I drew it up on some cards, and then it just kept going. And then my 3 friends who all came around, we spent a year, play testing and doing on the job training. I've always been that kind of personality. I'll learn a new thing and just like be absorbed by it. Like I did photography for a while and just, was doing weddings within a year and that sort of thing. I've always had that kind of obsessive personality when it comes to that. So, but board games is like one of the main things that as soon as I like latched onto that, I haven't let go, and I haven't lost the fervor to let go yet. So
I can totally identify with the whole obsessive personality thing. I have that problem all the time. Like,
I think that's a nerd trait, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, like I decided about a year ago that I really liked, or I played like my first Dark Souls type game, Dark Souls I played Bloodborne first, and I was like, oh, I have to play all of these and understand them all. And I recently took up mountain biking, and it's like I have to ride every trail in the Middle Tennessee area, and I have to understand how everything works. And I kind of obsess over it. Yeah. Like it can be a really good trait, but I get frustrated. Do you get frustrated with that trait of yourself sometimes?
I did it first because I think we misunderstand it a bit. I think we look at it as we fail when we don't continue to do something. Yeah. But as I've gotten older, I've just learned that I like to coin this our organic passion, and it's a wave that you can't manufacture it. So when you get that organic passion about a subject that you're pulled toward, you're drawn in. In my case, it was World of Warcraft that ruined half my life or a third of my life. It grabbed onto me and didn't let go for 8-9 years. It's a thing that you actually can use now as you get older, and you just learn how to put good framework around it. And so like in this case, it gave me a new career. For you, mountain biking may turn into a career. Who knows?
Ooh, you can do it, Drew. Come on, man.
That is not happening.
But I think it's almost like a natural season of your life, right? Like if it comes and goes, then it was just something that was a phase, it was a season. But eventually you're probably going to find one that stays.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just your midlife crisis.
Well, that's how I've been framing it, because I turned 36 this year. And so I feel like it's a pretty healthy midlife crisis compared to a lot of things I could be getting into.
Right.
We've talked about this on this podcast before, so I don't want to belabor it, but
I think that's an interesting point though, James. Like I think in our youth, we don't have maybe some of those healthy boundaries and ways of thinking about things. And so we're just kind of these really, well, I for sure was just very impulsive and yeah. All right, take it easy. But I think as you get older and you learn things the hard way, you're able to put some of those boundaries in place and channel those energies and passions in a more healthy way and in a more like productive way. You know, is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's also ties into our credit card society. So when we're young and dumb, we get that credit card and you get passionate about a hobby.
Free money.
You just go hog wild, right? You buy a bunch of stuff. And I think that ties into part of our disappointment when we lose that organic passion. You look at this thousands of dollars of equipment of mountain biking stuff, or I look at all my camera gear and I go, man, I'm not using that now because I'm not passionate about doing it anymore. And then we have all this regret, which is layered on, even though we've moved on. So, and I think what happens as we get older, A, we get more responsible with our money, and B, we don't have as much time to invest in those hobbies, even if we do get passionate about something.
Yeah.
So we kind of start to self-limit whether we want to or not.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you say you had that like organic passion for board games before, like way before you started Druid City?
No, absolutely not. So, great. And I should have let you finish the question before I started answering it. But no, I was still a Warcraft nerd and still in my Warcraft hole. And one of the people that I raid with in town was like, hey, we do a board game night. Would you want to come over and play board games on Tuesday? And I was like, that sounds awful. Why the hell would I want to do that? I don't want to play Monopoly. I need to grind my mats for the raid next week. Get out of my face. And he was like, no. We don't play Monopoly. We play games that are more fun than that. And then plus he was just like, hey, we drink beer too. And I was like, cool, I'm there.
There you go.
We went in and we played Power Grid, and I never looked back. Like I played Power Grid and I saw like there was actual real options and agency in my choices. And then I was like, well, what other games are like this? And then that just spiraled.
And when was that? Like what year was that?
That was 2015. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like
so it was right then.
Yeah. I spin it up quickly.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, well, I don't know, at least from my perspective, that's when things were really like taking off board game wise. I mean, obviously there's stuff that's been around for longer than that, but that's when I started getting really into it. And, Scythe and all these things coming out. Like I still remember being at that Gen Con when Scythe came out, and like every other person that walked by was carrying that giant box of Scythe. And
Blood Rage.
Oh man. Yep.
Give me all the Blood Rage. Yeah. That was one of those first games that I was like, really introduced me to Kickstarter. And then I was like, oh God, look at all these miniatures. Oh.
Yeah. My life's ruined.
And you are you back tons of things like on Kickstarter nowadays, right? I always see you on Facebook backing, talking about what you're backing on Kickstarter and stuff.
Yeah, I do. It's a double-edged situation. I want to keep my ear to the ground and know everything that's going on in the lane that I spend the majority of my time with my business.
Sure.
And then also I just really love supporting other creators. So now that I have a bullhorn, I want to use it to help as many people as I can. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, that's cool. So, tell us some of the things you've done with, you already mentioned like Grim Forest and stuff. What are some of the things you've done with Druid City and with Skybound that you're really proud of?
Yeah, I mean, Grim Forest is our biggest hit to date, right? And the whole point of that was I wanted to make a game that was a gateway game that was fun to play, but visually compelling. I wanted people to walk by and see that on the table and go, what is that? I want to play whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And I think we killed that. I think that's what we set out to do that. And I think that's what we accomplished. And like right now we've been up for awards for artwork and production and family game. Those are kind of the three categories that it's won awards in. And so, that was what we accomplished. Now we're doing things like that I'm super proud of. Tidal Blades, Heroes of the Reef. Mm-hmm. We really wanted to set out and make a new world, like a cornerstone IP world that people would just gravitate toward. And I feel like we've done that. Obviously the game's not out yet, but we've got offers coming in for animated series and video games, and people have just seen the world and they're like, yes, more, give. So
that's cool. Very
And
cool.
for me, that's like huge. Like that whole going back to the creator aspect from earlier. Like I don't get more fulfillment than those type of
Yeah,
things,
I mean, what
right?
a
Like,
vote of confidence there for sure.
And there's things that I've created that I was super proud of that didn't hit, and you're just like, oh, dang, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't consider myself like an artist. Like I think there's people that have that thing inside of them they just need to create. I mean, that's what you've said, and I think that's you. I would imagine, maybe you can speak to this, like having another artist or another creator, like you said, these offers coming in about title blades, like that has to be maybe the highest praise, like other artists that look at the thing that you've helped create and say, yeah, like I want a part of that.
Yeah, it's tough too, because also I can't draw, right? Like I can draw some stick figures. I don't have any sort of necessary most people in board games can do one of those things. They're either a graphic designer or an artist or something, because it helps. It helps a lot because there's not a lot of money in board game industry. So if there's one of those things that you don't have to pay for out of your pocket, that's real helpful.
Yeah.
And so it's weird, but that's another thing that I also want to tell people is like you can still be in this business. You can still be in creating content and creating things without having the standard drawing. Oh, I can't draw, so it doesn't matter. Or sing, I can't sing. Whatever.
Yeah.
I definitely can't sing. But it is interesting collaborating because that's a different skill set, and I do think that's one of the things that I excel at is bringing people together, setting vision, and then getting everybody on the boat moving in the same direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So let's get a little bit more personal. Where'd you grow up?
Alabama.
Oh,
Couldn't have guessed.
Roll Tide.
You a big
Are you contractually obligated to say that?
I lived 2 miles from the stadium when I moved to LA. It's been one of the biggest heartaches of my life to live here in the fall when SEC football. I used to jog every morning to watch people setting up on the quad for the games that day. Oh man, I miss that so much.
Yeah, I lived in Alabama for 5 years, and that was probably one of the things that people can't you hear about the obsession that people have with Alabama football and with Auburn football for that matter. And you're always like, oh yeah, whatever. All fans are crazy and all fans are passionate. But it's another level, man.
It is, and it's because there's nothing else to do there.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of it for sure. So you grew up in Tuscaloosa then? Is that what you said?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And what was that like?
Oh, I mean, it was the only thing I ever knew, but B, it was, Tuscaloosa is a college town. It's I think the 5th largest city in Alabama, which doesn't really say much compared to one of our neighborhoods here in LA is bigger than the population of Tuscaloosa.
Right.
But it's a university town. So everything revolved around the university, everything revolved around college football. So that was kind of built in. I grew up in I grew up on a farm up in the north part of the county and went to a tiny little high school. And then I went to town when I grew up.
So were you working on the farm and stuff when you were in high school or even younger? I hated school. I was that kid who always did really bad in school, but I love school because that means that I didn't have to work on the farm anymore during the summer. Yeah.
Because it was pretty much wake up at 6 a.m. during the summer vacation, and I was free labor. So
right,
for sure. What were your folks farming?
We were mostly vegetable farmers. So we had acres and acres of tomatoes. It was it was a nightmare for a 9-year-old, You just see this rows of tomatoes that you knew you had to pick that morning that were just you couldn't even see the end of them. You're just like, oh God, I'm going to be here. For a non-detail oriented person, literally my worst nightmare is picking string beans. Yeah. Those rows of string beans. Oh my God.
Yeah. Are your folks
I'm getting
still
a little
at it?
triggered right now.
My grandparents are, my grandparents still, they're in their 80 or about to be close to 80. And they still do the farmer's market every Saturday and Tuesday. That's their main income.
Wow.
That's what they do. Yeah.
That's commitment. I appreciate that. That's a level of commitment to your craft, to your trade that That's super admirable, I think.
Yeah, and it's weird too because it's not like the produce that they make and they sell at like a farmer's market is more of like a specialty item now, right? Like, because none of that stuff goes to the grocery stores. None of that stuff helps actually feed. I mean, they do feed people. People eat it, but again, it's more of like I went to the farmer's market and got these special homegrown tomatoes.
Yeah,
but people aren't relying on them to eat.
We do it too. Yeah, we go to the farmer's market for that same very reason. But your parents got out, I guess, of farming. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. My parents split when I was 10, and then so I was kind of man of the house. And my mom was a nurse, and she actually worked like 3 jobs growing up. But nurse, did a mail route on Saturdays, and waited tables any nights that she wasn't working.
Yeah.
But we still helped. It was her parents that were the farmers.
Gotcha.
So that was the land that we lived on. So even all the way up until I could drive a car, I worked on the farm every summer. And then from there, I was like, no, I'm getting out of here. And I went on. I moved way up in the world, and I started. I had a summer of building barbed wire fences for another farmer, but he was paying me like $15 an hour cash.
Yeah.
But that was also the hardest I ever worked in my life.
This was like around. I don't know how old you are. Do you mind sharing how old you are?
Oh God, what? Let me do math. I think I will be 37. So I'm 36. So I was born in 82. Yeah, am I doing the math right? Yes.
So we're in the same. We're both like midlife crisis time.
Class of 2000. Woo!
Yeah, I was 2001. So yeah, we're right in that same range.
Yeah, my parents started me early because it was free childcare. So
right, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. So, your dad though was not like when your parents split. Your dad wasn't really around, or
no, I didn't have the best dad. He's one of those like extremely selfish, self-centered people who it was always all about him. Still to this day, still all about him.
Yeah.
He's living his life and doing his thing, but I don't really have a whole lot to do with him.
Yeah. So, was religion a part of your upbringing? Did you grow up in the church or anything like that?
We went on Christmas and Easter like any good Christian would.
Any good Tuscaloosan? Do you say Tuscaloosan?
Tuscaloosan, yeah, sure, why not?
Tuscaloosan, yeah.
We do now.
I imagine like Tuscaloosa, but maybe since it's a college town, maybe it's different. But I imagine it being like
super conservative.
Yeah,
it is.
That's true.
It is.
Okay,
it's super Baptist, super super restrictive, super conservative, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
whatever label you like. But yeah, no, we went a good bit as a kid. It was for me. It was around after college. My mom she started actually dating like a new guy. Finally, she took a big long break from dating people because raising kids is hard. And then she got into church, which got me into church. So that's when I started going. And I've always again been a seasons kind of guy. Like I float in and out of my faith. So yeah, I did a good stint there. Got out of the church because I got burned out. The church does that to people pretty quickly.
What was like the source of your initial burnout?
I was actually going to the first time I had churching, you would call it, was again right around college time.
Yeah,
I was going to church for all the wrong reasons, like because I was drinking and partying and doing whatever and having quote unquote fun. And I felt guilty about it. So I would go to church and then cry and feel guilty and then go up to the altar because I was a terrible person and then be like, I'm just trying to get better. I'm trying to be a better person. Mm-hmm. And, eventually that little charade wears off if you're not actually getting some deeper teaching of the faith, right? Like the guilt can only take you so far. Sure. And so that burned out and I quit and we got married, had a kid, and it was easy to be like, I'm just not worried about church right now because I'm busy raising this baby that never sleeps and hates us. And around 6 months when he finally did start sleeping and we were able to sleep, a couple hours a night, one of the things me and my wife, she did grow up in church. Her mom plays the piano at her church and has played it for like 40 years. Like she was in church every Sunday. She was like, hey, James, I have to go to church. Like this isn't going to work for me. So, she kind of drugged me in, and we started searching for a new church, and we found it was serendipitous, it was fate, whatever you want to call it. But we had a door hanger one day that said, and this is odd for Tuscaloosa, there was a church plant starting in the local movie theater.
Yeah,
and we were like, that sounds like crazy people. Let's go see what that's about. And man, just the first time I heard Troy speaking, he was like, just boom, I was there. He's like speaking into my soul. Like there was a dude who was up here talking like openly about things that he had screwed up. He was just real. And there was no facade. And, that was one of the things that he was like, we don't have masks here. Like, don't come in here with your smiley face saying everything's all good. We know it ain't all good. And then I was like, I found my people.
There you go. Yeah.
And so we did that church plant for, gosh, man, it was 6-7 years.
Yeah.
The church grew, to a pretty decent size to the point that it needed to get out of the movie theater and split off into 2 different locations. And then,
wow.
As churches do, man, you get a bunch of people in there and it gets messy. It gets messy. And so then the last couple of years that we were in Tuscaloosa, we just kind of bounced around to different places. And then we've been here in LA, and finding a church in LA is, it's different than Alabama.
It's a little different.
And
we went to, well, just here's a perfect example. We went to a church that we thought we might be interested in for Easter Sunday, and they had a hip hop song, and like hip hop pop song. So it was like
as a worships, people are trying to sing with it or whatever.
Oh, dude, no, it was like these 5 ladies were insanely talented.
Oh yeah.
Choreographed the dance with their song, and then a dude hopped in for like at the end and rapped part of the song, and I mean it was amazing. But for an Alabama boy, I was like, I am definitely in LA,
Do you like? Yeah. Do you, or maybe it's some of both? Do you appreciate that, or does it feel like
love it? First of all, love it. No hate on it.
Right.
Love it. If you're passionate and you have a skill in something, there's no reason not to use it as a part of your faith,
for
right?
sure.
Like, that's whatever. It was just it was a shock as far as like just the execution of a program, right? But then for us, it's more the coldness that LA people approach other people with. It's not like the South where it's like, you're new here? Oh, sweet darling baby, come over for dinner. We'll cook you a dinner. We'll get you some friends. We're going to get this figured out for you.
Right. Yeah.
People throw the arm around you and almost force you in the South. Whereas here, people are like, oh, that's neat that you're new here. Everyone is. This is LA. And then then they go on to their life. So we haven't felt any sort of like real big welcoming essence at any church that we've been to.
That's interesting, man. Like so I'm from Indiana originally, and I moved out to Arizona when I was like 20, and now I live out here in Ventura in California, and there isn't a culture of like having people to your house for dinner. Like that to me is a normal thing, but we've found, like, much like what you're saying, there just isn't this culture of like, I don't know, having people in your homes. We've lost it or something, or maybe we never had it. I don't know.
There's something magical about breaking bread and having a meal with somebody.
Yeah,
right? Like,
for sure.
There's something that happens. Yeah. Guards are let down, that sort of thing. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention, like, essentially what has really formed what is now my current worldview / faith / whatever you want to call it, is we spent 5 years in a community called the Brown House community in Alabama. Okay. And it's next door to the housing projects in Northport, which is essentially Tuscaloosa, same thing. And it was 11 houses. We shared and the community's still there. We're just not. They share a green space in the backyard, basketball court, soccer field, that sort of thing, walking track. And across the street is the housing project. And 4 days out of the week, they tutor the kids. One of the things that the founders, Adam and Amy Pierce, found is that when kids are in poverty, they don't get the support at home that they need to do their homework. They become illiterate. And then that's like one of the leading causes of imprisonment. Mm-hmm. So, they're like, well, that's easy. We can just tutor kids when they get off the bus because they roam the streets a lot of times anyway. So we'll just have them get off at our house and we'll do the tutoring and make sure they get their homework done. And so they spruiled that up like 15 years ago, and maybe even longer than that. And so we spent 5 years in that community living that life. And man, that will change your perspective quickly when you live life with a minority who is especially in the South, where it's like you're a drain on the system, entitled. Yeah. You just, all these incorrect preconceived notions that come about people. And it totally changed everything for me. So
that's interesting. So you would say, like, before you had this experience, you were kind of in that camp of viewing people in poverty as like, oh, you guys just aren't responsible and
Well,
blah,
no,
blah,
I don't
like,
think I was quite there, but I definitely had some bad. There was some bad information in my head, right? Because
Right.
it's programmed into you. I definitely went in thinking, A, I'm going to go teach these people about Jesus. B, I'm going to help them, ascend to whatever level they want to be at, because all they've got to do is try, right?
right. Yeah.
And those are the two, those two things. And then quickly I learned on A, they taught me way more about Jesus than I taught them, thankfully. And B, sometimes circumstances, no matter how hard you try, withhold you the privilege of getting the opportunity to actually succeed.
Yeah.
And you don't, like, when people get into these Facebook thread wars or whatever, and they're like, white privilege, blah, blah, you don't understand. Like, that is a for real thing. And I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen people who want to get out of the projects. They are working their butts off. And when something sets them back, it's not the same as me. When I get set back, I go to my grandfather and I'm like, hey, I need to borrow $1,500 to fix my car so I can go to work.
Right.
And he'll give it to me. Right. Or I go to the bank and I get a credit card. Well, when you don't have a grandfather that has any resources, or you don't have credit that allows you to get a credit card, and you don't have any way to get that $1,500, you just lose your job. And then you get behind on your bills, and then you get kicked out or you get evicted. And so people are like, well, they should have found a way. Well, that's easy to say when you have easy access to resources to fix the problems that you have.
Totally.
And you can't really appreciate it until you've walked with folks.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, because, like, for one, I think we live in a culture where, like, we all want to think that we're on the right side of every issue. Whatever it is, that we have the right perspective on it, and we want other people to know that we're, like, right about this. And I think a lot of people, even let's, for the benefit of the doubt, let's say they are right about it, but still they haven't, like, made an effort to actually, like, do life with people. Sure. And really get to know people who are struggling with poverty or whatever issue. And I think it's hard for us to admit when we're wrong in our culture today because of social media, I think, and some other things. But just to hear you say, like, I had this experience and it really just changed my perspective and shaped my faith. Like, that's
for sure.
Right there, I think. In this
it's tough because, I don't think the Christian, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so disillusioned with the church right now, is
safe place. You say what you want.
The Christian faith doesn't actually live out what the Christian faith should look like. The American Christian in general, and, obviously we can all point out to someone that's the exception, but as a whole, we just don't live the way the Bible lays it out that we should, right? Like, we're quick to attack. We're not slow to anger, right? Like, every proverb, like, if we go and read out the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus did, we fail. That is a F- as far as the faith's concerned.
Right.
And so I feel like, we're the Christians are one of the biggest detriments to more people coming to the faith of Christianity. And I know it's one of the things that burns out most people with the church. So, and I had it firsthand when I would, go out to, like, I have actual real world examples. And I think, kind of, Drew, what you were alluding to is Facebook allows people to sit on their pedestal and preach without actually getting out and doing. Yeah. And the Christian faith is a faith of doing within the world, right? Like, it is a doing. You're supposed to practice the things. And so, I have real world examples of like, I'll reach out and say, hey, I have this mom, and we always exclude names. We're not trying to turn people into, projects and that sort of thing. But it's like, hey, we have this mom who's trying really hard. I shouldn't have to qualify her, right? But I do. Yeah. She's trying really hard and she needs help. She's behind on these bills. I'm trying to raise $500 to help make sure she doesn't get evicted and her kids can stay in the programs that we have here and that sort of thing. And, you'll have people who's like, well, when you say she's trying, like, give me some examples.
Oh gosh.
And you're like, hey man, I don't need your money. Thanks. Go away.
Yeah. Peace.
Yeah.
We would have people that want to come over and have a popsicle party with the kids, which is at first we were like, well, that's fine. That's great. we'll do anything to let you get plugged in. But then quickly we figured out like those are really only self-serving things. They're not giving those kids anything long term. You know, they're not. It's just a pop in to make themselves feel good. Like, hey, I did my Saturday work day.
Yeah.
Now I go back to living my life the same way it was. So we started carving out that. Yeah, go ahead.
And that like question of like, give me some examples of how this person's like trying is like kind of goes against the gospel, you know, like the gospel.
You're being nice. You're being nice.
Like the gospel's this promise of like that God loves us because he loves us, like not because we've earned it or deserve it or whatever. Like but we want to like couch whether we're going to give to somebody based on whether we think they deserve it. It's disgusting.
Yeah. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
I don't hold punches. So it's disgusting and it's not Christian and it's not human either. That's the other thing. Like one of my favorite mentors, I would say, even though I've never met him, is Father Gregory Broyle. I never say his last name right. Because they just in all of his books, it's Father G or just G. Mm-hmm. And he is actually local here to Los Angeles. So that was one of the reasons like I was really excited to move here. I was hoping I can find a way to meet with him one day. But he's spent 35 years in the wards here and he does gang rehabilitation and he's lived his life. He does Homeboy Industries. If you guys,
I know who you're talking about now. Yeah, I'm connecting the dots.
And some of his books, you just read them and you're like, I would just be weeping because like the guy just gets it as far as like the way that he interacts with gang members that society has totally just tossed and said, these people are the worst of the people that we could have here. And he just talks about how, God just sees them. He loves them just the same and loves them maybe even more because they're so excluded and they're so driven away from the mainstream.
Yeah.
So, yes, I'll start preaching, man. I'll start going. You
Come
just
on.
gotta kind of watch that.
Come on.
No, I like it. That's good.
My church would have 0 participants.
So I have no, you might be surprised. I have a question kind of just about growing up and being like, it seemed very, working on the farm and all that kind of stuff. Like, when did you start getting nerdy? Like, you obviously got into World of Warcraft, you said, like, was video games a part of that or other board game stuff? And how did that, because I know growing up in Indiana, which obviously isn't South, but there's still a lot of the same values and stuff. It was not okay for me to be nerdy. Yeah. So I'm curious what your experience was like with that stuff.
No, I definitely hid the nerddom. Yeah, it was. It wasn't cool to be a nerd back then, right? Like the Nintendo and the Sega and all that kind of stuff was mainstream. That was fine. But when I think it was like around 95 when I got like one of those first like Windows 95 like home PCs back when that was like cool. I finally got one. I saved my money and bought one and started playing some computer games. And that's when I played like the OG Warcraft, like the turn-based, like you're doing moving the stuff around and glug and harvesting the wood.
Aren't they remastering those?
Work. Yes, the third one, Warcraft 3, the Frozen Throne.
Yeah.
And so I did that and did Diablo 2 or Diablo 1, Diablo 2. And then that was one I played.
Did you play any of those like on dial-up? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Cool. It was the only option, my man.
Yeah.
The only option.
I remember having games with my buddies back then, and we would. I don't think we even had like internet in our houses really, but you could just dial into each other. Like you could call one another and play that way.
Yeah.
And so like we'd tie up the phone line for like 2 or 3 hours. Yeah.
LAN parties, baby. LAN parties. Yeah.
I kind of miss that era because it feels like almost impossible nowadays. I mean, and part of it's because I'm a dad and I'm 36 and blah, blah, like whatever, have a busy job and life and stuff. But it feels like almost impossible to invite people over to your house to play video games. Like if we're going to play video games with other people, it's only online.
Well, and I mean, why would I come to your house? I can just do it from the comfort of my PJs and on my couch, right? The systems have facilitated that being easy for us.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I love a board game, right? Like,
yeah, that's true. That I guess, and that's probably a big part of the rise of board games is like people like the growing popularity of it nowadays. As I think it's people want that analog experience of like with my friends in the same place, like doing something together. Because it's so hard to come by, I think.
Well, even when I played Power Grid that first time, that was, I mean, obviously the agency, the choice, I enjoyed the mental challenge that the game presented me.
Yeah.
But it was a different feeling the way I connected with my friends than when we were raiding on Warcraft, right? Like it felt totally different. And it was a new dopamine that I enjoyed. And then we replicated it quite often. And then it's, now when I struggle in LA to get games in with a gaming group, because if people don't live within a couple miles of you, it's real hard to coordinate things here. But still, when I get to sit down and have that 3-4 hours of playing games, there's just not much that touches that like a board game delivers.
I'm ready for Twilight Imperium whenever you are, man.
Woo! I said 3 or 4. That's like 6 to 8. That's a big commitment.
I'm ready. You tell me when.
I'm in. I need to play it. I still haven't played that one.
Chris will tell you that you can like play it in 5 hours. Verbose.
Hey man, I have a group, like we play somewhat regularly actually in like Culver City. And I mean, if everybody knows what they're doing, you can easily finish in 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, I'm not with a newbie though. Not with a noob.
Yeah.
We'll
It's interesting the way you described like playing board games with people though, because I think there's this guy Johann Huizinga who was kind of one of the fathers of like game design, you might say. Like a lot of his research into game, like how games have shaped human culture and stuff has been really like formative for a lot of people. Anyway, he talks about game spaces being like this magic circle where they're like this set apart sphere. And this is not like new age or anything. He's just talking about how games are this set apart space with their own rules that apply and that are like, they're absolute. The rules in that space are absolute unless you're a dirty cheater, but but like they're not fun to play anymore, right? If you play with people who cheat,
right?
But it just made me think about how special it just connected the dots between what you were sharing and that sort of idea that games are this really special place where and I think we don't think of them that way, like in our culture, especially among Christians. Like we think of them as really trivial or unnecessary parts of our lives, but I think I think that's a big mistake. And like, if you think of it that way, you're missing out on a lot. Not that we have to actively be going, oh, this is super special, but to cherish times when we get to like do something that's not productive, like in a work sense, but still has lots of meaning. Like that's a super.
We need margin in our life. Like that is necessary for us to function. And I think that's one of the big detriments of our current society is that we fill up our day far too much and there's no margin. There's no time to reflect on your faith or have any quiet time or, just breathe for 5 minutes. We're always running, going, doing. And I mean, I don't know how many days I sit down and I'm like, man, it's 8:30. I got to put Stella's going to bed. Like I go to bed around 10:30 myself. I'm like, cool, the day's done. And what did I do today? I don't even know.
Yeah.
But you hit a point that was interesting because I'm filming a new show called Starting Roll that'll be coming out sometime this summer. And my first guest was Rodney Smith. And one of the things that he talked about specifically was something. Obviously, there's a thing that's happening on the table, but then he pulled his hand up and he's like, "There's something that happens up here." And he's like, "How many times in life do 4 strangers sit down and agree empirically to a set of rules that they're going to abide by?" Yeah. He's like, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Right. And so it was interesting. I never heard anybody word it that way, and then you just brought it back up and I was like, okay, this is a recurring theme here that it is. Yeah.
That is that sacred space. I mean, the word sacred to me feels right because it's so uncommon and seemingly impossible nowadays to like have common ground, And I think that's what draws me to gaming and just nerd culture in general is like, it's so cross-cultural and crosses every divide that we have and joins us together in this common purpose of, saving the world or running power plants or whatever other weird games we play, Yeah,
for sure. And I think too, it's like in our sort of like super divided culture and also in our increasingly like, it's weird because we're very private people that we don't interact with other people in person very often, but at the same time, we're like super social online. That I think it's so easy to like other people because of that. You know what I mean? Like to sort of treat them or to think of them as not fitting within your whatever politics or religion or whatever you want to fill in the blank with, or a view of the world, right?
Right.
But board games and I mean, heck, mountain biking like give you these opportunities. Like I finally found some guys to go mountain biking with, and like I haven't had any deep conversations with these guys yet about like, you know, religion or politics or anything, but I know that I like them because
What a great place to start.
Because we've shared an experience in the woods riding bikes, right? And like they've like, to give you an example, when I crashed my bike and one of the guys in this group was just like, hey, you can borrow this extra bike that I have until yours gets fixed. Which is like so generous. And I broke his bike.
Wow, Drew. So
Yeah,
going back, I'm not sure you will make a career out of mountain biking.
Drew wants to borrow one of your games. You know, man.
Yeah.
Well, this is how quality of a guy this guy is. So I called him and told him like, dude, I broke your bike. I'm really sorry. I just broke the brakes. Like it needed to be fixed. And I was like, I took it to the shop. I'm going to pay for the repair, but I just wanted to own up and let you know that happened. And he was like, oh, it's really cool, man. And he was like, I'll pay for it. I was like, no, I insist. I'll pay for it. So that was the end of that conversation. Well, I go to pick up his bike from the shop because he lives on the other side of town. And when I go to the shop to pick up his bike so I can eventually like give it back to him next time we meet up to ride or whatever, they're like, oh, he called and paid for it over the phone.
Son of a gun.
Like, and so I texted him, I was like, dude, you're a saint. That was so nice of you. You didn't have to do that. And he was like, I know your bike's broken and like, it's going to be it's a burden on you. And I just wanted to do something nice for you. Like that's the sort of thing that's just, so like, and I have a point in all this. And the point is that like, it could come out that his politics are like way different than mine, or that, you know, he has some view that I might find, had I not had these experiences with him, I would have found offensive or something. I doubt that's going to happen. He seems like a super great guy. But my point is just that time together and like those, you know, like we just need to find ways to like hang out with each other and be with each other. And then we won't have these messed up assumptions that keep us from like othering each other and treating each other as if we don't have worth and value. And I think board games in particular really provide a special opportunity for similar types of experiences, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's something about that you're right. Humans in general, we have more in common than we're willing to admit most of the time. And that's one of the things that's very unsettling for our current state of politics in this country, right? That the system has driven both of the prevailing parties to so opposite ends of the spectrum, so that it feels like we don't have anything in common. And I can't remember. It was what's the actor's name who plays Lebowski? Jeff
Bridges.
Jeff Bridges, thank you. He was on MSNBC this week or last week or whenever it was, and he railed, and it was great. It was like a plea of like, come back to the middle. In the middle is where we win. These extreme ends for both parties is just going to kill us. It's going to be the end of democracy. Yeah. The middle is where we win. And you know, he'd done it more succinctly than I just did. But it was nice to hear someone finally like not get on a quote unquote liberal channel and then just go up and down, whatever. So yeah, it's we have more in common. You know what? He might be the polar opposite of you. That doesn't mean anything different, right? You almost need that to have that base chain to go, well, I still know he's a good dude, you know, even though we see things differently in this one aspect of life.
Yeah,
exactly.
It gives you it gives you ways to temper your overreactions about things. Like it's funny, I have these relationships with people on Facebook. A lot of what we do with LTN, like it's all online, and we have all these online relationships. And there's people that I know that on Facebook, I really don't like them because just the way they come off or the way they communicate, the way they interact with people, I'm like, gosh, you really seem like a dick. And then I've met them in person and it is completely different. Like it is so bizarre to me that, like, man, in real life, you are so loving and kind and tender and thoughtful and, you know, all these really redeeming qualities, I think. And even to the point where I've thought about, like, man, should I talk to them and say, like, hey, I don't know if you know, this is how you come across, you know, in this digital space. But it's such a weird thing. These online personas, and, you know, we just make people faceless, and it's much easier to hate people that don't have faces, you know?
Mm-hmm. We were talking about it before, I think before you got on the show, before we started recording and before you were on, Chris, but James was talking about how you immediately notice a difference when you started limiting the amount of time that your son plays Fortnite.
Sure, absolutely. And watches YouTube videos about it. I think I'd actually let him play more as opposed to watching these other people that are doing these outlandish things to get views and make people pay attention to their channel.
Mm-hmm. What kind of difference? Like, what was the change?
He was remarkably more violent. It was more short, full of angst. Was quick with his sister. He's 10, his sister's 5. You know, was just raging against him. I'm like, hey man, all right, whoa, nah. Because I mean, his number one imperative every day before he walks out the door that I tell him is to be kind and to find the lonely people. You know, find the people that that don't have friends and be a friend to them.
Wow, that's cool.
You know, and then I'm like, cool, now go make sure you do your homework, you little jerk. But you know, that's some of the things. So when, you know, and it's easy for me to pull back to that and go, hey man, you're not acting very kind, are you? And he's like, nope, I'm not. So even he could recognize that he had this angst and he didn't know what to do with it. He's just repeating what he saw, you know?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I was sort of relating that to what we are like, I think, because I think a lot of us, we look at kids like that, or our own kids especially, or any kid that's playing Fortnite, and we go like, oh gosh, what a twerp, or what, you know.
For sure. Twerp, that's not the word that comes to my mind, but yeah,
you know, and we're like, so we can see the excesses of how like media or whatever is affecting other people, but we're all the same way with our phones and things, and we just don't realize it, you know. At least I think I am. Like, if you took my phone away for a day, I think I'd be.
Would you throw a tantrum?
No, I think it would probably be good for me. You know, I think I'd probably learn a lot about myself. It's probably something I should do because it wouldn't be that.
It is. I did it. It was probably been a couple years ago now, where I did one full day. Like, I don't remember if Ashley took it. My wife took it away from me, or, I mean, it wasn't like she woke up and said, hey, you can't have your phone. Like, I consciously said, hey, I just need a day to not deal with this thing. And it was so glorious. And it's only taken me 2 years to try to do it again.
Yeah, I have gone on like long hikes and stuff where I didn't have my phone with me, and that's really nice. So I think I would enjoy it overall, but it would feel weird. I know my wife has this love-hate relationship with it, where she will go through, like, she decided she wanted a dumb phone. I'm probably gonna get in trouble for sharing the story, but
well, we can edit it out.
So like we go to T-Mobile and we're like, can I buy a dumb phone? And the guy's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And it's funny because he was like, so they do have this phone it's not actually technically dumb. Like, you can still access the internet, but the browser on it is so terrible you wouldn't want to access the internet with it. And so it was like a flip phone. So she got that, and the guy was like, tried to warn her, like, he was like, look, you can bring this back, you know. Like,
you're really not going to want this.
It's like, you can bring this back. I'm pretty sure you're going to regret this. Kind of, he didn't say that exactly, but he kind of did. And after she bought that phone, it was like, literally the next day she was like calling me, and she was like, I know you're going to make fun of me, but I hate this phone.
Yep.
So yeah, we're all addicted. I mean,
it's
me too. Like, I'd be the same way. I'm sort of giving her a hard time, but
do you have any kind of James, do you have any kind of like unplugging ritual? Because I imagine you're super connected, like online and stuff, just seeing how active you are. Like, do you have any kind of best practices or anything like that?
No, I'm not the guy to preach on this. I mean, board games really are one of the ways that I disconnect, and I do play. I try to play, 4 or 5 times a week with my kids and my wife, because that's just a great way for us to connect. But no, I'm more of a which we've really started enjoying. Like, I go down to Santa Monica because it's the closest, and just sit on the beach. Like, just put my phone down and sit on the beach. Wherever you can, right? Like, just put your phone down.
Yep.
That's step one. I had a stint in my life where I did a bunch of yoga. I had a buddy who was a big into yoga, and we'd meet every morning. We'd have morning coffee and prayer, and then we would do like a 30-minute yoga session, and that was how we started our day. I did that for like 6 months, and it was amazing. But then, just like the seasons of life, that reasons it goes away. I wish I was better at being able to say that thing I need to keep that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, we're kind of running out of time here, but any projects you got coming up that you would want to make sure our listeners know about?
Oh gosh, the biggest. I got so many things in the slate. We've got 23 projects for the next 2 years. Okay, so tell us almost 23. The newest thing coming out is the Grim Masquerade. It's a party game follow up, like strategic.
You showed us that, I think. Yeah. At PAX South.
At PAX South, that's right. Yeah. So we're proud of that one. We've got a Walking Dead card game that's going to be fun and entry level for just hangouts.
We chatted with Lizzie about that at PAX South.
Yeah. We've got Sorcerer City coming out probably at Gen Con. That is it's a cool tile laying. So think Carcassonne meets Dominion. So it's tile laying and deck building in one game. It's kind of a new genre of game, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to sign it, because it was cool. Mm-hmm. Then we've got Tidal Blades that'll be hitting this fall, and then we've got a new Kickstarter that will hit called Wonderland's War, which is I'm blown away by this game.
Freaking Manny, dude.
Manny's amazing, and this might be my favorite game mechanic that we've made to date.
That's cool.
It's just it's amazing. So
yeah, Manny Tremblay is who we were talking about. Who came on this podcast like a couple months ago, maybe month or two ago, something like that.
I don't know why he's not famous. Like, I don't get it. Like, his artwork is amazing. How is he not stupid famous? I don't get it.
I know.
I mean, he's like super famous in their rabid Dice Throne community, but for sure, it's just a matter of.
I guess so. The dude's like, driving nice new cars and big houses and stuff. Like, why is he not getting paid for this gorgeous stuff? And I guess it's because he did what we did and chose board games as his way.
That's probably part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people who like. He's the kind of guy who's just going to do what he's passionate about. So
for sure. Oh, for sure. I love working with him too. He's great.
Yeah. Awesome.
The one thing is totally like it's a 180 for when we're trying to close the show out. But I did want to share and this sounds very Southern of me. I want to share my favorite verse and why it's my favorite verse.
Yeah,
please do.
Come on.
It's Mark 9:24. It's where the father of the boy that was possessed brings the boy to Jesus, and he's essentially, here's the synopsis. Hey, bro, can you heal? He's possessed. Can you heal him? And Jesus is like, can I? And then the father's like, yo, I believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. That is I need to get that on my forehead.
That was the James Hudson translation, by the way.
It was. That was the James Hudson.
JHT.
You got the idea. But that's the thing I struggle with. I believe, but I've got so much unbelief, and it gets funneled into lots of different avenues, right? Like the church. I'm disillusioned with the church, and I understand at the core that's not what I'm supposed to be focused on, but it's impossible not to be focused on it. And I'm very science minded, so then I just 100%, go, is this even a thing? Do we make this up just to make us feel better about dying? Like, I struggle with all those things all the time.
Yeah.
And that verse for me is like my anchor. It's like, cool. Jesus still is like, yeah, bro, it's all good. Like, it's good. I got you.
Yeah. I resonate with that, man. You're not alone in that.
Well, I think everybody does. I just think they're liars.
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
I think everybody wants to put that mask on that they're super faithful, or that they don't have those concerns or those doubts. And I think that's just being dishonest to what it is to say that you even follow a faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
So,
Amen.
I love that. It's good. It's a good note to end on. Well, thanks so much, James, for coming on, man. This was
Appreciate you.
I mean, we've gotten to chat several times at conventions and stuff, but it was cool to like kind of get a bit deeper and like hear your story and hear how you believe, but you also don't, and you're honest about it. And I really like that. That's really that's a breath of fresh air. So
I don't know what to do with it. I hope eventually it all works out. And
You just let us know when you figure it out, okay?
Yeah.
That way we can do the same.
We'll come back and be like, I got it now. You guys ready? Here we
just
go.
give us the answer.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The more I learn, the more I figure out I'm not even asking the right questions.
Yeah.
That's the truth. So where can people find you online? What's the best place to like look up your work?
You can look up pretty much anything Druid City Games, and you'll probably find my @handle on Twitter, or I do a James Matthew Hudson on Instagram. I do a bunch of stuff on the IG now. So whatever, Facebook, I'm in the Board Game Spotlight group pretty much 24/7. So any of those three modes that you like, you can do those. And then I've got new shows that are coming to Twitch and YouTube over the summer. So look out for those things.
Nice. Yeah, we're excited. Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of you and give a shout out to Board Game Spotlight. That's a really great Facebook group because I think like all nerds, board gamers can be a little snooty sometimes.
They get salty.
Yeah, and can be like it can be this group where you feel like, oh, I don't really fit in here because they're way more into this than I am or something or whatever. However, whatever insecurity we project. But that's a cool group because I feel like it feels welcoming. It doesn't feel like elitist.
We're the Care Bears.
I mean, it can get every nerd group can get a little bit elitist, like let's be honest, but it feels different to me than a lot of like online board gaming groups, and I really enjoy like participating in it when I get a chance to.
It's at the core of what we wanted to do with that group, right? Like we saw that elitism, that gatekeeping that happens in the other groups, and like just the flame wars, and we're like, that's not what board games are about. Like I don't even know why that's happening because you don't even see that at a convention, right? Like that doesn't happen. So the online whatever, like we talked about in this episode, really is facilitating this. So how do we structure our group so that it's not like that? It keeps us small, out of all the other groups where we're like maybe fourth or fifth biggest, and we'll probably won't ever grow to their size because there are some people who just want to be shitty and they're not going to stop. If they look at you as just censoring them because you want them to be positive. And I'm like, go over to that corner over there and be shitty with those people. That's fine.
Have fun.
So
plenty of places online you can go and be like that. There's Reddit. There's
oh God, Reddit.
Let's go to Reddit.
Reddit is a cesspool. Oh, YouTube comments and Reddit.
Yeah,
I mean Twitter sometimes too. A lot of times.
Anytime there's anonymity behind the name, like that Reddit and YouTube comments, that really fires people up to be like, I can say whatever I want.
Yeah.
I can spew hatred all I want here. But anyway, this is great talking to you, James. Definitely encourage people to go check out your work and check out everything that Druid City and Skybound is working on. There's some really exciting projects coming up. I'm personally very excited about Wonderland War and Tidal Blades. So definitely keep an eye out for those games. And you can follow me on Twitter if you want, DruidDixon82. I am on Instagram as well, same handle. I just started. I'm like way late to the Instagram party, but I just got on like a few months ago. So
it's just part of your midlife crisis.
Yeah, it is part of it. That's right. Not only am
Wait,
I
is that what the kids are using now?
That's right.
What's this Snapchat thing?
Yeah.
I do like it because it's like it feels like Facebook minus. It's like all the things that I would want to see on Facebook. Like I like seeing pictures of my friends and the stuff they're up to and their kids, their vacation with their family or whatever. Like that's enjoyable. Like to see, oh, they're having fun at Disney. Like, oh, that looks cool. But none of the political garbage,
Right. So, I had my first experience with downloading something that I didn't get. So I know I'm starting to get old. The TikTok thing. I don't know if you guys have seen TikTok. I downloaded that, made myself an account. I was like, this is what all the kids are talking about. This is what they're doing. And then I was on there for 5 minutes and I was like, this is dumb.
I don't know what it is. I don't think I want to know. I think I'd probably just stay like ignorant of it, that'd be good. I did get Marco Polo. That's fun.
Yeah, I use Marco Polo a good bit, especially when I'm at conventions to communicate with the family because it's so hard to FaceTime in the now, but you can do the messages back and forth. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it is great. Chris is on Facebook. You can follow him or friend him on Facebook. He'll accept your friend request. Search for Love Thy Nerd on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and like us or follow us on all those places. Also, we have a community called Love Thy Nerd Community. Just search for Love Thy Nerd Community on Facebook and ask to join it. Once we are sure that you're not a robot, we'll let you in. It's a really great place. We have a whole podcast network. So this is one of 3 podcasts that Love Thy Nerd produces. So go check out Free Play, which is kind of a general nerd culture show that's super fun. The guys and gal that lead that show are just a blast to listen to. So go check them out. And then we also have The Pull List, which is our comic book podcast.
Comic books! Go read some comic books.
That's right. They probably talk about some Skybound comics every now and then, I would imagine.
Oh, they do.
So,
yeah, they do.
I've heard them talk about The Walking Dead before. So there you go.
They're going to be talking about it now. There's the hook in the storyline right now is insane.
And then
I feel like you're biased.
Last 2
Definitely.
things, we have two Facebook Live shows that you should check out. So go check out Beard Bros on Fridays, Friday afternoons, evenings. It is a great board game, mostly board games, almost all board games that they review on there. And so definitely go check that out. And then also we have Co-optional now where Matt, one of the 2 Beard Bros, will play one of the games that they reviewed on Beard Bros with his wife. And then they give away a copy of that game. So go check that out and you could win a copy. Like, this is pretty cool. Who gives away a board? I mean, besides, don't say Board Game Spotlight because we already know you guys give away board games. But it's pretty cool. Not many people
Imitation
give away.
is the sincerest form of flattery.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks again, James. This was awesome.
Yeah, it was great. I really appreciate you guys having me, and namaste, y'all.
Yeah. Cheers.